scripts. We're going to talk about outbound calls. And again, we absolutely have a document we're going to share with you at the end of this segment. I like this document. It's a pretty neat piece. How many calls must you make versus how many will you make? You know how many you must make because we did the one-page business plan. And you know that basically the formula is if you want to close 100 files, you have to make 4,000 phone calls, roughly speaking. That's ballpark the math, right? It's like a 40-to-1 ratio. That's just the reality. So if you know that you need to make 10, 15, 20 calls a day, then the question you have to ask yourself as well is, how many will you actually make? And that becomes a factor of understanding who you're going to call, when you're going to call them, and what you're going to say. And like I say, if you look at that one-page plan, it spits out the number. It spits out the number of how many calls you need to be making. Rule number 1, control the conversation, right? Control the conversation. I touched on this earlier. It's really easy to get into a conversation about all kinds of things that have nothing to do with real estate financing because there's lots of hot topics. I mean, you know, talk about Elon Musk and Twitter or whatever, right? Like there's one that a whole bunch of you are like, oh, I'd love to talk about that. There's lots of hot topics out there to have conversations about, but they don't serve you, they don't build your business, they don't serve the client who actually really did call you to talk about mortgage financing, so keep control of it. And as we just touched on a moment ago, one of the things I would do routinely inside the first 10 to 15 minutes, I would almost never let it go past 15 minutes, I would look at my phone and I would say, hey, I'm sorry, we're 9 minutes in and there's this one thing that is super important that I like to share with every first-time caller. It's really important to me that you understand how mortgage prepayment penalties work. In fact, it's more important than ever in the interest rate environment we are now in. Because a short-term fixed, a 2-year fixed, maybe a 3-year fixed, or a variable, we can talk about those products, has a much, much lower prepayment penalty than a 5-year fixed. And over the next 5 years, for the most part, there's a lot of talk about rates moving down. I'm not saying they're going to, but there's a lot of talk about that. And if they do, the prepayment penalties in those particular mortgage products will increase significantly. So the difference between what I'm talking about on say, a $400,000 mortgage, we're talking about the difference of $4,000 penalty versus a $20,000 penalty. So it's a really important thing to keep in mind because a lot of people default to 5-year fixed who shouldn't. We really need to have a deeper conversation about what your bigger plans are, what's happening in your life, because 6 out of 10 Canadians break their mortgage at an average of 33 months. And I would get that little speech out every time. And that's how I would break the conversation. And it was incredible to me. It was like a really valuable lesson in human psychology. We're having a whole conversation about their new Tesla Model X and how much they love their new Tesla Model X. And it's the best thing they've ever bought, and they're so glad they went to electric, and then they had the electricians come, and they installed this charger, and blah, 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 and they're gonna get the power wall, and they're going on about all this stuff because they're really passionate about it, and they're excited, and it's new, and it's fantastic. And I would interrupt them and say, hey, you know, love what you're saying, really important to me that I make sure I get this one piece into this conversation. And I never, ever had anyone after that shift back to, so again, my power wall never happened. We never went back to the topic they were talking about because it didn't really matter to them. What really mattered to them was financing and reminding them. So, as I say, keep control of the conversation. Make sure, because next thing you know, yeah, what the hell just happened there? Like, how did I just lose 50? I told you I'd get a GIF in here. I knew I would do it.
Oh,
you know,
so good.
What the hell just happened, right? Like 54 minutes later, you have a whole new understanding of electric vehicles and everything else, and that's great, but you don't have a mortgage application, and the client is just as upset because 54 minutes later, they don't have anything actually happening on their mortgage, and they're going to hang the phone up, and if they have a life partner who is trusting them to get the mortgage in motion, did you get anything done? Well, no, but I called the broker. That's it, we're going to my bank. you've lost. Control the conversation. Stay on point. Stay on topic. Rule number 2, keep it positive. Keep it positive. We don't need to go into negative topics, right? It's like I say with the masterminds. You don't come in there and tell a story about a file you just lost, a client that just broke up with you. You don't tell a story about that unless you saved it in the end. That's the only time you get to tell a remotely negative story is when it has a happy ending. It has to have a happy ending because we can get all the negativity we need. It's all around us, right? If it's not on the media, it's in our social media feeds. Like we're constantly being reminded how we're too tall, too short, too thin, too fat, too this, too that, like on and on and on. So we're surrounded by it. So on that call, your goal is to make their real estate financing dreams come true. They've got dreams, they want them to come true. They want to own a home, they want to refinance, they want to buy a cottage, they want to open a business. They're looking for this capital as efficiently as possible, not necessarily as cheaply, as efficiently as possible. That might be the lowest rate. It might actually be the quickest turnaround because it's a time-sensitive situation. So you need to keep it positive. You're in the making dreams come true business, right? Not the arguing with clients and not the rabbit hole clients. And again, not winding up with the whole like, what was that? Like hanging up the phone and being like, what did I just do with 2 hours of my life there? So when it comes to making these calls, we're going to talk about the who, the when, the how, and the what to say, right? And again, what are we saying? We're mostly speaking questions. We're asking, not telling. And keep in mind, you know what your goal is. Your goal is a happy client, because a happy client is a referring client. And how are you going to make them happy? You're going to make their dream come true. That's the whole goal of this whole thing. So let's start with the who. This is a bit of a laundry list slide. We can stay on the slide, and I'll put it all out there, and you can take a screenshot of this slide if you need to. But there it is, right? Past clients, wedding guests, realtors, real friends, Facebook friends, family, LinkedIn connections, realtors, lawyers, certified financial planners, certified accountants. All these different people are people that you want in your database, that you want to be contacting on a regular basis, and you want them supporting you in some fashion. And you should be reaching out to them to support them. How are they going to support you? Well, if you support them, they'll support you. That is basically how that works. When should you make these calls? When you have the juice. All right, as I touched on earlier, for me, clearly, I should make the calls at 9 a.m. because I'm on and I'm going. That's when I should be reaching out to people, and I do. I reach out through a camera lens most days at 9 a.m. That's when I'm on. I don't set those for 6 a.m. because I'm not on at 6 a.m. I'm just barely awake at 6 a.m., so that's not going to work for me. So sorry, Eastern Standard Time folks, it's going to be noon. That's when I'm going to pop into your world with hopefully a burst of energy. But it's also not going to be 8 o'clock at night. That's when I'm starting to unwind and ease down. So understand when your power hour is. It might be 8, 9, 10, 11. It's probably one of those hours. Probably not 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And if it is, that's not everybody else's, strongest hour of the day. But again, you do you. Like what is, realistically between 9 and 5, what works best? And I'm going to suggest that the real sweet spot is between 10 and 11. That is a sweet spot. People are settled. They've dealt with a few little crises. They're caffeinated. They're hydrated. They're fed. They're awake. They're ready to work with you. They're ready to have a conversation. They aren't drifting towards their hangry zone. So you got to watch out with the calls just before lunchtime, right? Calling people at 11:45, this is not an ideal time to call people. They're getting hungry. They got their eye on the clock. They want to bolt out the door. So that mid-morning block, I think, is really kind of the best time. How? In person? Why? Why? Why do you want to meet people in person? That is so slow motion. No. Zoom? Maybe, but for a lot of us, some of us have hair and makeup challenges. I mean, my challenge with hair is I don't have any, but some of us have different kinds of hair challenges. And the whole Zoom thing, not everybody wants to be invited to a Zoom call either. The telephone is consistently the safest. It is consistently the safest. And I'm not going to go through each one of these 6 boxes in detail, but this is the, the call poster that many of you have seen before. We're going to send it out to you as a PDF. And to Rob's point earlier, absolutely worth getting a print shop to print this puppy up. And we've got the 6 key topics, right? There's the whole me time piece of who knows me yet but doesn't work with me. Like, do people trust me? Why not? So there's a little bit of self-reflection to be doing there, and to try and come up with some answers to these questions to help you work through the rest of these boxes, right? Realtors, there's a whole laundry list of questions to ask realtors. And realtors, they got the time to pick up the phone and have a conversation right now for the most part. The anniversary call piece. Again, focusing on forward. When you're calling people to check in who you've worked with in the past, you probably want to ask a couple basic questions about, how's the family, how's work, how are things going, everything good, great, and then you want to talk a little bit about, how was your summer, how were your holidays, weave that question in, work out the time of year as appropriate. Spring break is coming next. That'll be the next. Have you got plans for spring break? Did you go away for spring break? You're going to ask some of those questions around, and the dreams piece. What's your, if I really want to take you through the whole forward thing, again, you're checking in, you're calling up past clients, you're checking in on how's everything going? How's everything? Everything's great. Oh, the kids are good, everything's good, spouse is great, fantastic. How's work? Right? And you're going to get through that. And then the fun time. And again, this is where hopefully you know these clients well enough, you know what their goals are. So did you get away last summer, or did you get away this winter? Yeah. I'll use myself. Yeah, managed to go for a couple days up to Whistler, got a couple days of skiing in. Oh, wow, what's a hotel room worth in Whistler these days? Oh, like $1,000 a night. Damn. You still thinking about maybe buying a place up there? Well, yeah, the market's softening, and maybe there's an opportunity up there. Right now you're into the dreams piece. You just shifted from recreation to dreams. And what's your role? Your role is to make dreams come true. That's the whole point of what we're trying to do for clients. Make their dreams come true. Well, why don't we get an updated application? And you mentioned earlier that you got a raise. Yeah, okay. Well, so you've got a little more income in your life. Maybe we should review everything and take a look at the market. And you know what? I know a realtor that works that market quite well. Why don't you give me an idea of what kind of properties you're looking at, and let's start trying to put something together. And away you go. Like that's how an excellent mortgage anniversary phone call goes. And if you wait for them to call you, you could be waiting for a while.
In the beginning, somebody in the comments earlier said, who am I calling? I have nobody to call. The example Dustin just gave about, do you want me to introduce you to somebody in that market? I know I got a guy or I got a gal, right? Take this opportunity when they say, no, I'm actually working with somebody already. Oh, who? Sally, right? You don't have Sally's name. You don't have nothing. This is a perfect opportunity for you to build another relationship. That's going to count for a call for the day. It's going to be another contact card you're going to create. Sally might be working with somebody already, or 2 or 3 people, but, 5th place, you're a backup date to the prom. At some point, you're going to be that person they might call. So to add to that question before, I got nobody to call. Well, start finding people to call. The devil's in the details there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, well, it goes with the whole calling the listing agent as well.
Right.
Right? So first you're introducing yourself to the realtor that client's working with.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Then they actually get an accepted offer. Great call to make is introducing yourself to the listing agent.
Yeah, you got to be cautious with information. I know he's super detailed with the content here that you're getting about not giving up the ghost when it comes to personal details. But hey, I'm just reaching out. Sally, my name's Rob. I'm a mortgage broker in your area. We're working with the buyers that just got their offer accepted on your listing at 123 Main Street. Can't tell you much. Just want to let you know I'm on the deal and I'm looking after these folks. I hope to connect with you soon. Just keep it super basic.
Just wanted to introduce myself, let you know I'm not taking off on a vacation anytime soon.
Right.
I'm here, I'm working on your client's file and on the buyer's side.
Right.
We're going to make this happen.
Yeah, that's
Just give them a little vote of confidence.
Yep. Because guess what? Nobody's doing that.
No. It's a great call. It's a very, very powerful call to make. Referrals or refinances, right? Here's again, Another list of constructive topics when you're on the phone. What are the questions you're asking? What are you talking about? And the purchases, first-time home buyers, right? Having those conversations with the first-time home buyer, there's some key questions you want to make sure you're asking and some key pieces of information you want to convey on that opening call. And having this printed and stuck up on the wall, enlarging it so it's actually readable from 8 feet away, and being able to see those questions, it can really help you when you have sort of a moment where you have like a bit of brain fade, your thoughts kind of wander off over into left field, and the person's talking to you, and you're just losing the thread, losing the plot. Having this document handy on your desk, up on the wall in front of your monitors, it's incredibly helpful, incredibly helpful. And existing, right? So is your existing mortgage insured? Very, very important question that almost never gets asked, because that mortgage insurance, the CMHC mortgage insurance that people paid tens of thousands of dollars for in a lot of cases, that's portable. And indeed, I had clients who had paid not one, not two, but 3 separate CMHC fees on their 3 purchases, that they were all financed through the same branch of the same credit union. The same individual at that branch processed all those purchases and had them, he ported the mortgage over, but he didn't contact CMHC and port the CMHC coverage over. He made them buy additional CMHC coverage each time. And I forget the exact total dollar amount because it would have been a top-up. I think it was, if I recall correctly, it was around $6,000, maybe it was $8,000 in total that they got back. And the credit union wrote the check. They didn't put up a fight. They wrote the check and made the clients whole when the whole thing was presented. And those clients became my clients for life. In fact, I just wished one half of that couple a happy birthday the other day, and we had a little email exchange. And that goes back 8, 9 years. It was a long time ago. But when you can actually move the needle with somebody asking one of those questions that nobody else is asking, it can be incredibly powerful. And then obviously, as I say, there's the whole list there that I don't need to dig in and go through. When you're making these outbound calls, voicemail, that's something we got to talk about. You're absolutely going to catch voicemail. There's a screenshot of my own phone. I have 777 voicemails. I don't listen to a lot of voicemails, and because I haven't listened to it, I haven't deleted it. But what I do get is a voice-to-text conversion. So I see the voicemail, and I generally hit redial instantly, and I get asked, did you get my voicemail? No, I didn't, right? Reasons I check my voicemail, basically to get rid of the notification. I just let that go. It's not something I've prioritized. But you must leave a detailed voicemail. Good morning. It's Dustin Woodhouse, your mortgage broker, calling. I wanted to check in and see if there were any mortgage questions or finance concerns that I could address. Please call when you can. Dustin Woodhouse, 604, and slow down, right? Again, that's Dustin at 604-351-1253. Thanks so much. Have a great day. It's easy to go really fast. It's easy to go too fast. You got to slow it down a little bit. Repeat your name at least 2 or 3 times. Get the word mortgage in there at least 2 or 3 times. And make sure your phone number is in there at least twice, because you know what your clients aren't great at? That amazing skill that you now have, saving contact cards. Your clients actually want to refer you, but they didn't save your details, and they don't actually know how to refer you. So again, reminding clients of your contact information is crucial in the voicemail. Sending your contact card to them by text message, attaching it to an email, asking them to save it, not a bad move. Not a bad move. Now, true story, you leave a voicemail like this, you'll actually get referrals from people you've left a voicemail with and not actually spoken to. True story. Multiple brokers have reported this happening multiple times. I called, George and Sue. I left a voicemail with them. They never got back to me. We never connected. And then over the next month, I got 3 referrals from George and Sue. Like, that's just weird, isn't it? No, you've put your name back in their minds, right? Back in the RAS, the reticular activating system. You've stuck your name and the word mortgage together, in their brain again. And when they hear mortgage, they're saying your name, right? That's the goal, get people to say your name. Pro tip, and I know that you just signed in. I know that you just signed in, and I'm so glad you did, man. Don't script me, bro. This was a line delivered at a round table of phenomenal brokers who were having really great conversation and talking about making calls, calling clients, calling our past database. And he was like, yeah, I had this moment where, I've got my scripted voicemail, I've got my scripted sort of banter that I go through with clients, and I called my buddy up, and I didn't really take enough time to ask him, how are you, man? Like, what's happening? I just sort of slipped right into my whole mortgage spiel and the state of the economy, and his buddy pauses, stops him, and says, dude, don't script me, bro. Like, the dude part was probably me, but he stopped and was, don't script me, bro. I loved it so much I put it on a t-shirt, and I don't know if you still have the t-shirt or not, but yeah, it was a classic line, and it's such a great reminder it's important to have scripts, but it's important to understand when to use them and when not to use them. And for some of you who are following along, you'll notice I changed a couple of words. I didn't read verbatim the script that was in front of me, did I? That's not because I don't know how to read, and I actually have slides in front of me so I can see what is actually on the screen behind me, but that's just sort of a natural thing to let it flow a little bit. So you don't want to necessarily be reading a script verbatim, but you want those guidelines. You want the guardrails to help you stay on point. But yeah, be careful with the scripts when it comes to friends and family. Be very careful with those scripts. What's your goal? 10 calls per day, is this enough? Do the math. Maybe it's 20 calls per day, right? It could be 20. And if you're in the early days, it could be 30, it could be 40, it could be 50. It could be a lot of different calls that you're going to have to make. And that's just the reality of the business getting off the ground. What's your goal, right? You've got an income goal, you've got a volume goal, you got a happy clients goal, and above all, you've got a call goal, because it all relates, it all ties together, right? That's the key. What's the reality? Calls will define your success. That is the reality. Specifically, the quantity of calls you're making and the quality of the calls you're making, right? That's the reality. You can't get around it. And so we're going to share another call sheet with you, and another worksheet, another Excel sheet in the chat. And it's a realtor call sheet, because realtors love making calls themselves, the good ones. And if you love making calls, you don't mind receiving them. So a realtor's not going to give you a hard time about calling them. And many of you have heard me tell the story, and I'm just going to give you the super short version of the gentleman that decided the only path to success was to call 80 realtors a day, 80. And he got up on the Monday morning and he called 80, and Tuesday he called 80, and Wednesday he called 80, and by Thursday, Friday, he was like down to like 60, and by the next week he was down to about 30 or 40, and he struggled to ever hit 80 outbound calls again. Because, why? Because within 2 weeks, 10 days, 800 calls less, he had $2 million in volume in the pipe. That's the reality. He had 7 mortgages in the pipe, a little over $2 million at the time in volume, $20,000 gross commission in the pipe in 10 days. I'm not going to harp on my man that messaged me about the 7 months thing, but if you're somebody that hasn't closed a file in 90 days, 180 days, longer, you must be near that breaking point. And that breaking point for Paul was 80 calls a day, outbound to 80 different realtors. And you know what? You could pick 800, 1,000 realtors. You could pick 100 realtors, really, and just work them, call them. If you called 10 realtors a day, and you just picked 100, and you called the same 100 realtors every 2 weeks, that would work. I guarantee you it would work.